I'm going to destroy him. Those words hung in the air of our kitchen as I slammed the laptop shut. Emma stared at me, her wine glass frozen halfway to her lips. For 9 years, she'd known me as easygoing Nick Hayes, the laid-back IT consultant who avoided confrontation, who made jokes when things got tense. The man who just spoke those words was someone she'd never met before. "Nick," she whispered, setting down her glass. "What are you talking about?" The rage inside me was a living thing, clawing at my chest. On my screen was indisputable proof. Max Dalton had tampered with Emma's financial models, inserted errors into her reports, and fabricated a complaint to HR, all because my wife had refused to sleep with him. "I'm talking about making sure Max Dalton never hurts you or anyone else again," I said, my voice unnervingly calm, even to my own ears. Emma pushed her chair back from our kitchen table, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor. "You're scaring me," she said quietly. "This isn't you." I took a deep breath, trying to rein in my anger. Maybe it should be me. Maybe I've been too passive while this bastard tries to ruin everything you've worked for. She walked around the table and placed her hands on my shoulders. "Nick, please, let's think this through. If we go after him directly, he'll only make things worse. He has connections, power, the backing of the firm." "And I have this," I said, tapping my closed laptop. "Evidence. Proof that he's been systematically sabotaging you." Her eyes widened. "How did you? Does it matter?" "What matters is that I can prove what he's doing." Emma bit her lower lip, a nervous habit she'd had since college. "Even with proof, it might not be enough. The finance world protects its own, especially men like Max." I stood up and took her hands in mine. "Do you trust me?" She didn't hesitate. "With my life." "Then trust me with this. I have a plan." It had started 3 months earlier, when Max arrived at Blackridge Capital as the new head of investment strategy. Emma came home from work that first day with mixed feelings. "He's brilliant," she admitted, kicking off her heels and collapsing onto our sofa. "Harvard MBA, 5 years at Goldman, turned around the Asian markets division at Morgan Stanley." "You don't sound thrilled," I noted, handing her a glass of wine. She sighed. "There's something about him that feels off. The way he looks at the female analysts. How he interrupted Sophia 3 times during the introductory meeting." She took a long sip. "And he called me sweetheart when he asked for the Peterson portfolio numbers." I raised an eyebrow. "Seriously? In 2025? Welcome to Wall Street," she said with a tired smile. "Some things never change." But things did change, rapidly and for the worse. Within weeks, Max Dalton's true nature emerged. The comments became more frequent, the looks more lingering. He began finding reasons to meet with Emma alone. His office door always closed behind them. One night, Emma came home late, her face flushed with anger. "He asked me to dinner," she spat, pacing our living room. "Said he knows this discreet little place in the village where we could get to know each other better." She mimicked his smooth voice with disgust. When I reminded him I'm married, he laughed. Actually laughed. Said, and I quote, "I'm not asking for your hand, Emma. Just a little mutually beneficial arrangement." "What did you say?" I asked, my hands unconsciously curling into fists. I told him I wasn't interested, professionally or otherwise. She stopped pacing and looked at me. He smiled, Nick. Not angry, not embarrassed, just smiled. Said, "We'll see." I pulled her into a hug, feeling her body trembling with anger against mine. "He can't touch you," I murmured into her hair. "He's just another entitled asshole who can't handle rejection." Emma pulled back to look at me, her eyes serious. "You don't understand how these guys operate. They don't take no for an answer, especially from women they see as subordinates. And Max, he's different. There's something calculated about him, something cold." That night I lay awake long after Emma had fallen into an exhausted sleep. I couldn't shake the feeling that something very bad was coming our way. I was right. The retaliation began subtly. Emma's ideas were suddenly met with skepticism in meetings. A major client was reassigned without explanation. Her quarterly performance review contained unexpected criticisms about attention to detail and team integration. Howard actually asked me if everything was okay at home, Emma said one evening, stirring her untouched pasta around her plate. He said my work hasn't been up to my usual standards lately. Howard Bennett was a senior partner who had been Emma's mentor since she joined the firm. If he was noticing issues, something was seriously wrong. What did you tell him? The truth, that my work hasn't changed, but he showed me the reports Max forwarded to him. She rubbed her temples. There were errors, Nick. Basic calculation errors that I know weren't there when I submitted them. Then the sabotage escalated. Numbers in her financial models were changed after she submitted them. Emails she sent never reached their recipients. Documents disappeared from the server. It's him, she said one night, exhausted and defeated. I know it's him, but I can't prove it. That's when I started to act. As a cybersecurity consultant, I had skills most people don't. Skills that could uncover what was really happening at Blackridge. I need access to your work laptop, I told Emma. Just for one night. She hesitated. That's against company policy. I could be fired. Do you trust me? She looked into my eyes for a long moment before nodding. Completely. That night, while Emma slept, I installed specialized tracking software on her laptop. Nothing malicious, just programs that would log any changes made to her files and by whom. I also created a secure backup system that would store copies of her original work beyond the reach of Blackridge's servers. The software took longer to install than I'd anticipated. At 3:27 a.m., Emma appeared in the doorway of our home office, hair tousled from sleep. What are you doing? She asked, voice thick with fatigue. I didn't look up from the screen. Making sure we catch him red-handed. She walked over and peered at the laptop. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, meaningless to her, but a roadmap to me. Is this legal? She whispered. I paused, fingers hovering above the keyboard. Technically, number, but neither is what he's doing to you. She chewed her lip for a moment, then nodded. Do it. Whatever it takes. Within a week, we had our proof. The logs showed multiple instances of Max Dalton accessing Emma's files after hours, making subtle changes to data sets and projections, changes that would make her look incompetent or careless. Look here, I said, pointing to the screen. Tuesday, 9:48 p.m. He logged into the server using his own credentials and opened your Singapore market analysis. At 9:52, he changed 3 key valuation numbers, just enough to throw off the entire projection by 8%. Emma's eyes narrowed as she studied the screen. And here, Thursday night, he accessed my email account remotely? I nodded grimly. Used an administrator override, sent a message to the Johnson team with incorrect portfolio allocations, then deleted the sent record from your account. That bastard, she whispered. The Johnson team has been furious with me all week, claiming I gave them the wrong instructions. But confronting him with this evidence would only reveal that we'd violated company policy ourselves. We needed more leverage. The Peterson account is missing, Emma said one evening, panic in her voice as she searched frantically through her briefcase. The updated proposal for tomorrow's meeting, it's gone. I took her hands to steady them. When did you last have it? I printed it before leaving the office. I know I put it in my bag. Her eyes widened. Nick, if I don't have those numbers for the meeting, check your emails. Maybe you can reprint it. She opened her laptop, then gasped. It's gone from the server, too. The whole file vanished. That was when I made my decision. If Max wanted to play dirty, he had no idea who he was up against. Harvard graduate Jonathan Wexler was born the next day. With a meticulously crafted resume, digital footprint, and 3 falsified recommendations from prestigious firms, Jonathan applied for a quality assurance position at Blackridge Capital. This is insane, Emma said when I told her my plan. If you get caught, I won't, I assured her, though I was far from certain. It's a temporary infiltration. Get in, gather evidence, get out. What about your regular clients? I shrugged. I'll tell them I'm taking on a special project. Most of my work can be done remotely anyway. Emma paced our living room, rubbing her arms as if suddenly cold. This is too risky, Nick. If they discover what you're doing, it could be criminal charges. Computer fraud, corporate espionage. What's the alternative? I interrupted. Stand by and watch while he destroys your career? Everything you've worked for? She stopped pacing and looked at me, conflict evident in her eyes. There has to be another way. I'm open to suggestions, I said softly. She was silent for a long moment. Just be careful, she finally whispered. I couldn't bear it if anything happened to you because of this. I crossed the room and took her in my arms. Nothing's going to happen. I do this kind of security testing for clients all the time. This isn't a test, Nick. This is real. And Max Dalton is not some clueless corporate client. He's dangerous. I kissed her forehead. So am I when someone threatens what I love. 2 weeks later, Jonathan Wexler received a job offer. Entry-level position, modest salary, standard benefits package. Perfect. My first day at Blackridge was surreal. I'd been to their offices before for holiday parties and the occasional meetup with Emma for lunch. But now I was walking through security with my own badge, being shown to my own desk, receiving orientation alongside other new hires. Just keep your head down, I reminded myself. Be forgettable. It wasn't difficult. Jonathan Wexler was designed to blend in, competent but not exceptional, friendly but not memorable. I did my assigned work efficiently, ate lunch alone while observing the office dynamics, and spent every unmonitored moment mapping out Blackridge's internal network. The company operated on multiple floors of a gleaming midtown skyscraper. Executive offices occupied the top floor, corner suites with sweeping views and private conference rooms. Emma's team was 2 floors down, in an open-plan layout with glass-walled meeting rooms scattered throughout. My QA department was tucked away on a lower floor, sharing space with IT support and records management. Perfect positioning for my purposes. I began establishing a routine. Coffee at the same time each morning, lunch at my desk, brief, forgettable interactions with colleagues. All while carefully observing the rhythms of the office. Who arrived early, who stayed late, who had access to which systems. Their cybersecurity was good but not impenetrable. By day 7, I had gained access to the company's email server. By day 14, I could remotely view security camera feeds. And by day 21, I'd found my way into the restricted executive server, including Max Dalton's private folders. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Emma wasn't his first target, or his 5th, or even his 10th. A folder labeled HR Matters contained a spreadsheet with women's names, 27 in all, spanning his entire career. Each name had dates, notes, and status codes. Some were marked with a C for compliant, others with an R for resistant. Those were followed by either a T for terminated or an R for reassigned. Emma's name was there, marked R with a note. Phase 2 initiated, HR complaint filed. There were also audio files, recordings Max had made of private conversations with female employees. In one particularly damning clip, he explicitly told a junior analyst that her upcoming performance review could go either way depending on how accommodating you decide to be. In another, he threatened a marketing director with budget cuts if she continued to play hard to get. The woman's nervous laughter following his statement made my stomach turn. Most disturbing were the notes he'd kept on each target. Personal details, vulnerabilities, pressure points. For one woman, he'd noted her sick mother and mounting medical bills. For another, her history of anxiety and the medication she took for it. For a third, the fact that her husband had recently lost his job. He studied them, stalked them, identified their weaknesses, and exploited them systematically. I downloaded everything, encrypting the files and storing them on a secure cloud server only I could access. This was far bigger than just protecting Emma now. This was about stopping a serial predator. But I needed to be careful. If Max discovered he was being investigated, he might destroy evidence or accelerate his campaign against Emma. HR wants to see me tomorrow, Emma said that evening, her voice hollow. They mentioned serious concerns about professional conduct. I kept my expression neutral despite the rage building inside me. Did they say what specifically? Just that a formal complaint has been filed. She looked up at me, fear in her eyes. Nick, this could end my career. Even if the allegations are proven false, the stain never really goes away in this industry. I took her hands in mine. Do you trust me? Of course. Then let me handle this. Go to the meeting. Listen to what they have to say. Don't admit to anything. Don't sign anything. Just tell them you need time to review any allegations with your attorney. My attorney! We can't afford a specialized employment lawyer, Nick. Those people charge. We'll figure it out, I said firmly. This is your career, your reputation. We'll find the money. What I didn't tell her was that I was accelerating my timeline. The evidence I'd gathered so far was damning, but I needed to ensure it would stick, that Max couldn't wriggle out with his connections and charm. That night, I created a secure email account using advanced anonymizing techniques. Then I began compiling a dossier, organizing the evidence, annotating it, creating a clear narrative of Max's predatory behavior that even the most skeptical corporate lawyer couldn't ignore. As I worked, Emma tossed fitfully in our bedroom. Around 2 a.m., she came to find me, eyes red-rimmed from crying. I can't sleep, she said, leaning against the doorframe. Keep thinking about tomorrow. What they'll say, how I'll respond. I closed my laptop partially, shielding my screen from her view. It's going to be okay, Em. I promise. She crossed the room and perched on the edge of my desk. How can you be so sure? Because I know you. I know your work. And I know the truth always comes out eventually. She gave me a sad smile. You're sweet, but naive. Truth doesn't always win in the corporate world, Nick. Power does. And Max has all the power right now. I reached up to touch her face gently. Not for long. Day 23 at Blackridge, I took my riskiest action yet. Using my access to the building's security systems, I entered the office at 3 a.m., when only the night guard was on duty, and he was reliably asleep at his desk between 3:15 and 3:45, according to the security camera logs I'd been studying. The elevator doors opened silently onto the darkened executive floor. Motion sensors would normally trigger lights, but I'd temporarily disabled that system from my workstation before leaving the previous day. The floor was eerily quiet, the usual buzz of phones and conversations replaced by the soft hum of air conditioning. I moved quickly down the hallway, the beam of my penlight illuminating the path to Max's corner office. His door, like all executive offices, required both keycard access and a numeric code. Thanks to my position in QA, I had legitimate access to the security logs, which showed me both the most commonly used keycards and their associated codes. The door clicked open, and I slipped inside, closing it softly behind me. Max's office was opulent, custom furniture, original artwork, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline. A crystal decanter of what was probably obscenely expensive scotch sat on a side table. Family photos displayed a beautiful blonde wife and 2 perfect children, a facade of normalcy that disguised the predator beneath. I made my way to his computer, using a specialized USB device to bypass the password protection and access his local files. Things he kept off the network, things too sensitive even for his private server folder. What I found exceeded my darkest expectations. Max didn't just target women who rejected him, he systematically broke them. One folder contained detailed playbooks for different scenarios, how to isolate targets from supportive colleagues, how to create doubt about their competence, how to manufacture evidence of misconduct. Another folder contained compromising photos of several women clearly taken without their knowledge or consent. And most disturbing of all, a document titled Leverage Points contained personal information about his targets. Financial troubles, family issues, health concerns, things he could exploit if needed. Emma's name was there. Next to it, husband's consulting business, potential tax audit trigger. Research further. He was planning to come after me too. A sound in the hallway froze me in place. Footsteps, approaching slowly. I quickly closed the files, removed my USB device, and scanned the room for a hiding place. The footsteps stopped outside Max's door. A keycard beeped, followed by the soft beep of the keypad. I slid silently behind the heavy drapes covering the windows, pressing myself against the cool glass. The door opened. A beam of light swept across the room, the night security guard making his rounds. I held my breath, willing my heart to stop pounding so loudly I was sure it could be heard. After what seemed like an eternity, the light withdrew. The door closed. The footsteps receded down the hallway. I waited 5 full minutes before emerging from my hiding place, adrenaline making my hands shake slightly as I quickly checked that everything in the office was exactly as I'd found it. I copied everything, careful not to leave digital fingerprints, and was back out of the building by 3:41 a.m., invisible to cameras and motion sensors, thanks to the security blind spots I'd identified. The next day at work, I crafted my master plan while pretending to analyze quality metrics. I needed to strike a delicate balance, destroy Max without exposing my own actions, protect Emma without revealing she was connected to the investigation, and ensure the evidence was delivered to people who would act on it rather than bury it. Lawrence Blackridge, the company's founder and chairman, was known for his old-school values and iron-fisted approach to scandals. His son Richard, who served as CEO, was more image-conscious and might be tempted to handle things quietly. The wild card was Margaret Chen, the chief legal officer, whose reputation for ethical rigidity was legendary on Wall Street. Chen was my target. I studied her through the company directory and social media. Late 50s, divorced, 2 adult children, degree from Yale Law, former prosecutor before moving to corporate law. She had a reputation for integrity bordering on inflexibility. She'd been brought into Blackridge 5 years earlier, specifically to clean up after a trading scandal. Perfect. The HR meeting was a nightmare, Emma said that evening, her voice breaking. They have emails, Nick. Emails from my account to clients with incorrect information. Emails to colleagues undermining projects. Emails I never wrote. I pulled her close. He's fabricating evidence. They showed me the server logs. The emails came from my account, my IP address. He has IT access, Emma. He can spoof that. She pulled away to look at me. How do you know so much about this suddenly? I hesitated, then told her a partial truth. I've been researching corporate sabotage techniques, security vulnerabilities. I needed to understand what we're up against. She wiped her eyes. They're suspending me pending investigation. 2 weeks without pay while they gather information. My hands curled into fists. This ends now. Emma looked at me sharply. What does that mean? What are you planning? I forced my expression to soften. Just that I'm not letting you face this alone. We'll hire an attorney. Get your own expert to analyze those emails. She nodded, seemingly satisfied with my answer. But later that night, as she slept restlessly beside me, I finalized my plan. By morning, I had everything prepared. The evidence organized, the delivery method secured, the timing calculated for maximum impact. Max Dalton's day of reckoning was about to arrive. Day 25 at Blackridge, I executed my plan. At 9:17 a.m., an anonymous email was sent to Margaret Chen from a secure server. The subject line, Max Dalton, sexual harassment and evidence tampering. Urgent legal matter. The email contained a brief message. Ms. Chen, as Chief Legal Officer of Blackridge Capital, you have a fiduciary duty to investigate the attached evidence immediately. Multiple women have been victimized. Legal liability grows by the day. Followed by links to selected evidence files stored on an anonymous cloud server. At 9:32 a.m., security cameras captured Margaret Chen exiting the elevator on the executive floor, walking briskly to her office and closing the door. She did not emerge for 3 hours and 17 minutes. I watched through the security feeds from my workstation, my heart racing. Around noon, Chen finally emerged from her office, her normally impassive expression replaced by something I'd never seen before. Cold fury. At 12:49 p.m., Chen entered Lawrence Blackridge's office, tablet in hand. They remained behind closed doors until 2:21 p.m. At 2:35 p.m., Richard Blackridge joined them. At 3:10 p.m., the head of HR was summoned. I tried to continue my routine as normally as possible, completing my assigned tasks, participating in a team meeting about quality metrics for the quarterly report. But my attention kept drifting to my phone, where I had a discrete app showing me the security feeds from the executive floor. At 4:45 p.m., Max Dalton was called to Lawrence Blackridge's office. I watched it all unfold through security feeds, my heart racing. When Max entered the chairman's office, his confident stride and easy smile were intact. When he emerged 22 minutes later, his face was ashen, his movements stiff. He went directly to his office, closed the door, and made 3 phone calls. To his attorney, to his wife, and to Victor Keene, his second in command. I couldn't hear the conversations, but his body language told the story. Agitated pacing, hands raking through his hair, fist pounding once on his desk. At 5:37 p.m., Margaret Chen entered Mac's office with two security personnel. Words were exchanged. Mac's face contorted with rage. He grabbed a crystal award from his desk and hurled it against the wall. The security officers moved in immediately, restraining him while Chen spoke calmly into her phone. "What's happening?" asked Melissa, a fellow QA analyst, noticing my distraction. I quickly closed the security feed on my phone. "Sorry, just checking something. What were you saying about the database query?" She gave me an odd look but continued explaining the issue she'd been working on. I nodded at appropriate intervals, but my mind was entirely focused on what was unfolding 20 floors above us. At 5:52 p.m., Max Dalton was escorted from the building. At 6:14 p.m., a company-wide email announced that Max had resigned to pursue other opportunities and that Victor Keene would serve as interim department head while a search for permanent leadership was conducted. At 6:27 p.m., a second email was sent to all female employees who had worked directly with Max, requesting confidential meetings with the legal department over the coming days. And at 6:33 p.m., my phone rang. It was Emma. "They just called me," she said, her voice shaking. "Margaret Chen herself. She asked me to come in tomorrow for a meeting, said it was urgent but not to worry." A pause. "Nick, what's happening?" "Justice," I said simply. "It's happening." The next morning, I resigned from Blackridge. Jonathan Wexler cited a family emergency requiring immediate relocation. HR processed the paperwork without question. They had much bigger concerns that day. I cleared out my desk, nodded goodbye to confused colleagues who barely knew me, and walked out of the building for the last time. Jonathan Wexler disappeared as completely as he had appeared. Digital footprints erased, resume removed from job sites, social media accounts closed. I spent the morning in a cafe near our apartment, anxiously checking my phone for updates from Emma. When she finally called around noon, I answered before the first ring had finished. "How did it go?" I asked without preamble. "Can you meet me?" "Washington Square Park, by the fountain. I need some air." 20 minutes later, I found her sitting on a bench, watching children play in the fountain despite the cool spring weather. Her face was pale, but there was a lightness to her posture I hadn't seen in months. "They know everything," she said as I sat beside her. "The harassment, the sabotage, the fabricated evidence. They found it all." She shook her head in disbelief. "Chen said an anonymous whistleblower provided irrefutable proof." She apologized, Nick. The chief legal officer of Blackridge Capital apologized to me. "What happens now?" I asked, keeping my expression neutral. "They're conducting a full investigation, but they've already cleared me of all allegations. I'm being reinstated immediately with back pay." She took a deep breath. "And they offered me Max's position, head of investment strategy. Double my current salary, corner office, voting rights on the executive committee." I pulled her into a fierce hug. "You deserve it, all of it." Over her shoulder, I glimpsed my laptop bag containing the encrypted files still stored safely in the cloud, accessible only with a key I alone possessed. Proof of my illegal actions, my infiltration, my theft of corporate data. Evidence that could send me to prison if discovered. I'd delete it all tomorrow. The damage to Max was done, irreversible. The women he'd victimized would have justice, or at least as much as the corporate world ever provided. Emma pulled back to look at me, eyes narrowed slightly. "It's strange, isn't it? This anonymous whistleblower appearing just when things were at their worst, having exactly the evidence needed to bring Max down." I maintained a neutral expression. Sometimes the universe delivers justice in unexpected ways. "The universe," she repeated skeptically. "Or someone who loves me enough to risk everything?" I met her gaze steadily. "Does it matter which?" She studied me for a long moment before her face softened. "I suppose not. The result is the same." She squeezed my hand. "Thank you. Whether it was you or the universe." "For what?" "For believing in me. For not telling me to just quit and find another job. For fighting with me instead of telling me to retreat." I kissed her forehead gently. "Always." "How did they find out?" Emma asked later that night, her head resting on my chest in bed. "The whistleblower. Who do you think it was?" I stroked her hair. Maybe one of his previous victims, or someone in IT who noticed the tampering. Does it matter? She propped herself up to look at me, her eyes searching mine. You know something, don't you? What makes you say that? Because I know you, Nick Hayes, better than anyone. You've been different these past weeks, distracted, secretive. She touched my face gently, and the timing is too perfect. I considered my options, continue lying or tell her a version of the truth. I may have reached out to some contacts in cybersecurity, I admitted, asked them to look into unusual activity on Blackridge's servers. Not a complete lie, but far from the full truth. She studied me for a long moment. You'd never put yourself at risk, right? Nothing illegal or dangerous? I thought of my night in Max's office, the security guard's flashlight sweeping inches from my hiding place, the federal laws I'd broken accessing protected systems, the evidence I'd gathered that could send me to prison for years. Nothing I couldn't handle, I said, pulling her close to hide my expression. Nothing worth worrying about. She relaxed against me. Thank you, she finally whispered, for believing me, for fighting for me. Always, I promised, pulling her close again. I'll always fight for you. The aftermath unfolded over the following weeks and months. Max Dalton's carefully constructed life collapsed like a house of cards. His wife filed for divorce after learning about his predatory behavior. 2 former assistants filed harassment lawsuits. Blackridge settled quietly but substantially. His membership applications at rival firms were mysteriously rejected. His name became toxic on Wall Street. I saw him once, 6 months later, at a coffee shop in Midtown. The designer suit was gone, replaced by khakis and an off-the-rack button-down. The confident stride had become a shuffle. The commanding presence had shrunk to something almost invisible. For a moment our eyes met. There was no recognition in his, just the vacant stare of a man whose world had imploded. I felt a brief, unwelcome flicker of pity before reminding myself of Emma's tears, her fear, her pain. Of the 26 other women whose careers and lives he damaged or destroyed, the pity evaporated. I paid for my coffee and left without a backward glance. Emma thrived in her new role. The dark circles under her eyes faded, the tension left her shoulders, her confidence returned. Not just the professional mask she'd worn, but the genuine self-assurance I'd fallen in love with 9 years earlier. The Singapore team wants me to visit next month, she told me one evening over dinner. 2 weeks to oversee the new structural debt offerings. They've reserved the presidential suite at the Marina Bay Sands. I whistled. That's a long way from the days when Max was stealing your Peterson account. She smiled and it reached her eyes, something that had been rare during the dark days of Max's campaign against her. Sometimes I can't believe how much has changed in a year. The changes weren't just professional. Our personal life had flourished too. The strain that had been building between us, the tension, the secrets, the fear, had evaporated, replaced by a deeper connection. We'd started talking about buying a house outside the city, perhaps trying for a baby in the next year. Life was good, better than good, until the day I received an encrypted email from an anonymous sender. I know what you did. We should talk. Followed by GPS coordinates for a location in Central Park and a time, 3 p.m. the following day. My blood ran cold. I'd been meticulous about covering my tracks. Who could possibly know? And what did they want? I debated ignoring it, but the thought of an unknown threat hanging over our newly rebuilt life was intolerable. I had to know who had sent the message and what they wanted. The coordinates led to a secluded bench near the Ramble, private enough for a conversation, public enough to be relatively safe. I arrived early, scanning the area for anything suspicious. At precisely 3 p.m., a woman sat down beside me. It took me a moment to recognize her. Valerie Norris, Max Dalton's former assistant. Mr. Hayes, she said quietly, not looking at me. Thank you for coming. How did you find me? I asked, keeping my voice equally low. A small smile played across her lips. I was Max's assistant for 3 years. I saw everything, including the access logs showing repeated logins from a QA analyst named Jonathan Wexler, who appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. An analyst who bore a striking resemblance to the husband of Emma Hayes, one of Max's targets. I maintained a neutral expression. That's an interesting story. But I don't see what it has to do with me. She turned to face me directly. I'm not here to threaten you, Mr. Hayes. I'm here to thank you. That caught me off guard. Thank me? Max Dalton made my life hell for 3 years. I watched him systematically target and destroy women who refused him. I documented everything, planning to eventually report him, but I was afraid. Afraid of losing my job, afraid of being blacklisted on Wall Street. Her eyes filled with tears. I was a coward. But you did what I couldn't. I studied her carefully. If you're not here to threaten me, what do you want? She reached into her bag and withdrew a thumb drive. This is everything I collected on Max over 3 years. The originals are stored securely. If anyone ever comes after you for what you did, this is your insurance policy. Multiple witnesses, documented patterns, corroborating evidence. I took the drive stunned. Why would you do this for me? Because you saved us. All of us. The women he'd already hurt and the ones he would have targeted next. She stood up. I don't expect we'll ever meet again, Mr. Hayes.